I knew something was wrong the night I found a small voice recorder hidden beneath my favorite chair. The strange thing was that it wasn't mine. Someone had placed it there without my knowledge. At 68 years old, I had lived long enough to recognize when trouble was quietly making its way into a family. My name is Richard, and what happened inside my own home changed the way I looked at trust forever. Before I tell you how a smile nearly destroyed everything I loved, take a moment to subscribe if you enjoy true family stories like this. Now, let me tell you what happened. My son Michael married a woman named Emily after dating her for less than a year. She was beautiful, polite, and always seemed to know exactly what to say. Everyone loved her from the beginning. At family dinners, she laughed at my jokes, brought homemade desserts, and constantly told people how lucky she felt to be part of our family. If you met her once, you would probably think she was the perfect daughter-in-law. But there was something I could never explain. Every time I entered a room, Emily looked at me in a way that made me uncomfortable. Her smile never disappeared, but her eyes seemed different. It was almost as if she was studying me, watching me, waiting for something. At first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. After all, Michael was happy. That was what mattered. I didn't want to become the bitter father who criticized his son's wife for no reason. Weeks passed. Then small things started happening. Items in my bedroom would move. A framed photograph would sit in a different place. Important papers would be stacked differently than I remembered. Nothing major disappeared. Just enough to make me question my memory. I blamed age. Maybe I was becoming forgetful. One afternoon, I came home from grocery shopping and found Emily standing inside my study. She quickly stepped away from my desk when she saw me. "Oh, Richard," she said. "I was just looking for a pen." A pen? There were dozens of pens in the kitchen. I smiled politely, but something about that moment stayed with me. A few days later, I noticed my desk drawer slightly open. Inside were financial documents, insurance papers, and property records. Documents nobody should have been touching. That night I couldn't sleep. Questions kept running through my mind. Why was Emily interested in my paperwork? Why did she always seem to know where I was? Why did I constantly feel watched inside my own house? The next morning, I purchased a few small security cameras. I didn't tell anyone, not even Michael. Part of me felt foolish. The other part felt afraid. I installed cameras in my study, the hallway, and near the basement entrance. Then I waited. The first few days showed nothing unusual. Emily cooked. Emily cleaned. Emily smiled. Everything looked normal. Then, on the fourth day, I saw something that made my stomach tighten. While Michael was at work, Emily entered my study. She closed the door. She walked directly to my desk. Then she began searching through my papers. Not casually, carefully. Like she was looking for something specific. For nearly 20 minutes, she examined documents, took photographs with her phone, and returned everything to its original place. When I watched the footage, I felt cold. I finally had proof that my instincts weren't lying. But I still didn't know why she was doing it. I considered confronting her. Instead, I decided to wait. Sometimes answers reveal themselves when people believe nobody is watching. The following week became even stranger. Emily started asking questions, questions that seemed innocent on the surface. Had I updated my will? Did I still own the lake cabin? What would happen to my assets if something happened to me? She always asked with a smile. But every question felt like a fishing line cast into deep water. I answered carefully. The more she asked, the less I trusted her. Then something happened that changed everything. Late one evening, I woke up thirsty. The house was silent. I walked toward the kitchen. As I passed the hallway, I heard voices, whispering, very quiet, coming from the basement. Michael and Emily lived on the second floor. Nobody should have been downstairs. I stopped moving. The whispers continued. I couldn't understand the words, only the sound. My heart began beating faster. Slowly, I moved closer to the basement door. The voices suddenly stopped. Complete silence. I stood there for several seconds. Then I heard a faint metallic sound, like something being closed. I opened the basement door. The stairs were dark. No movement, no voices, nothing. Yet I knew I had heard someone. The next morning, I reviewed the camera footage. What I found disturbed me. At nearly 2 o'clock in the morning, Emily had entered the basement carrying a cardboard box. 20 minutes later, another man arrived through the back entrance, a man I had never seen before. He followed her downstairs. Neither appeared on camera again for almost an hour. My hands shook as I watched. Who was he? Why was he inside my house in the middle of the night? And why was Emily hiding it? I wanted answers immediately, but I forced myself to stay patient. The next night, I pretended to go to bed early. Instead, I remained awake, watching, waiting. Around midnight, Emily quietly left her room. Michael stayed asleep. She walked downstairs. Minutes later, headlights appeared outside. The same man arrived. This time I followed, carefully, silently. I moved toward the basement door. Voices echoed below. I stepped down one stair, then another. My pulse pounded in my ears. The voices became clearer. I recognized Emily immediately. Then I heard something that froze me in place. She said my name, not casually, not affectionately. She was discussing me. I leaned closer. The man asked if everything was ready. Emily replied that she still needed a little more information. Then she mentioned legal documents, pot, records, bank accounts. I felt sick. They were talking about my finances. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked beneath my foot. Silence, instant silence. Someone below had heard it. I turned and hurried upstairs before they could investigate. For the rest of the night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, Emily greeted me with her usual smile. "Good morning, Richard." Her voice sounded perfectly normal, as if she hadn't spent the previous night secretly discussing my personal affairs with a stranger. I smiled back, but inside, I knew the situation had become dangerous. Over the following days, I dug deeper. Using public records and social media, I eventually identified the mystery man. His name was Daniel. What I discovered next shocked me. Daniel wasn't just a friend. He had a history of financial fraud investigations in multiple states. No convictions, but enough complaints to raise serious concerns. The moment I learned that, everything changed. I finally understood why Emily had been studying my documents. But I still didn't know the full plan. Then the final piece arrived unexpectedly. One afternoon, Michael left his laptop open while taking a phone call. A message notification appeared on the screen. Normally, I would never invade my son's privacy. But circumstances were different now. The message came from Emily. What I read changed everything. Emily wasn't targeting me because of money alone. Years earlier, before Michael met her, my company had unknowingly purchased a business that belonged to her late father. The acquisition had been legal, but her father blamed the loss of his company for the collapse of his finances. Eventually, he died believing he had been wronged. Emily had spent years convincing herself that I had destroyed her family. She married Michael to get close to me, to investigate me, to expose me, and if possible, ruin me. The financial documents weren't part of a theft plan. They were evidence she hoped would prove I had committed crimes. But there were no crimes. The accusations existed only in her mind. That evening, I asked Emily to sit down with me. For the first time, her smile disappeared. I told her everything: the cameras, the recordings, the late-night meetings, the documents, the messages. She stared at me without speaking. Then tears filled her eyes, not because she was caught, because she realized she had been wrong. Over the next hour, she explained everything: the anger, the obsession, the years she spent believing I had ruined her family. But the truth was far different than the stories she had been told. The business failure had happened long before my company became involved. Her father had hidden the truth from his family. When Emily finally saw the evidence, her entire world collapsed. She apologized repeatedly. Michael was devastated when he learned everything. For months, our family struggled to heal. Trust doesn't return overnight. Sometimes it takes years. Daniel disappeared from their lives immediately, and Emily began therapy to address the resentment she had carried for so long. Today, our relationship remains complicated, but it is honest. And honesty is stronger than any fake smile. Sometimes the people who seem the kindest are carrying secrets you cannot see. And sometimes the truth hiding behind those secrets is even more painful than you imagined. I thought I was being hunted for my money. In reality, I was being judged for a crime I never committed. That misunderstanding nearly destroyed an entire family. If you made it to the end, tell me in the comments. Would you have trusted Emily at the beginning, or would you have noticed the warning signs? And if this story kept you hooked, share it with someone who loves family mystery stories. Remember, the most dangerous lies are often the ones people tell themselves for years. Until next time, take care of yourself and the people you love.